Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today's video is actually a continuation on our prior video on the NBA mock draft. This is actually the second round of the mock draft on the continuation. We should have a link below or a card later on in the video that you can go back and refer to what we had previously selected. So for the very first pick of the second round, the Kings are on the clock, and we have them selecting Vernon Carey Jr.
Yeah, and for those of you wondering about how the Kings did get on the board here at 31, obviously this is the Mavericks pick. We did have a draft day trade revolving picks 12 and 18 between the Kings and Mavericks, and 31 was part of that. Vernon Carey here going to the Kings, kind of giving them that stability behind Richaun Holmes in the front court. Could be one of those guys that's a screen and roller, drop off dunker, sits dunker spot. Not really a ton of upside in my opinion for Carey, but I think he's going to be, an NBA rotational big, and I think at 31 there's some value there for Sacramento. Moving on to pick 32 here with the Charlotte Hornets. Where are we going here, Austin?
Yep, for this pick, we're going to have them take a wing, and they're going to go Cassius Stanley out of Duke. Kind of a raw prospect. Would like to see him refine his jump shot a little bit, but a lot of upside in terms of athleticism. Very Hornets-like pick, considering they took Miles Bridges just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, for those of you who haven't seen Cassius Stanley, the guy jumps out of the gym, really good end-to-end athleticism, really fast, really quick, explosive first step. And I think here in the second round, he's a worthy project pick for a team trying to develop some young talent out on the wings. Moving on to pick 33 here, the Minnesota Timberwolves previously selected LaMelo Ball and Jalen Smith. At this point, Austin, bring us into what the Wolves will do at 33.
Yeah, so for the Wolves, they are going to go Isaiah Joe, a shooting guard out of Arkansas. He has a very nice form. He can shoot the three ball efficiently. And honestly, for the Wolves, I think that's just very key for them to continue to build their offense, because clearly they do not care essentially about defense. So I think this pick makes a lot of sense for them. Add some more shooters around D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns, and you're going to have to kind of parade them with threes if you're the Wolves.
Yep, Joe definitely helps space the floor for them, especially if LaMelo Ball is the pick at one. I think getting a shooter, a guy who's really capable of moving without the ball, would be a very, very wise selection for the Wolves in the second round here. Pick 34, the Philadelphia 76ers, still looking for some more shooting, some more wing play, and also some guard play here at this point. Where do we have the Sixers going?
Yeah, we have the Sixers going with Killian Tilly, power forward out of Gonzaga. And Tilly's a guy that is deemed a poor man's Danilo Gallinari, possibly. You can look at him as he's a very solid three-point shooter, can help space the floor for the 76ers, which they are currently looking to space the floor even more with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons being on the floor at the same time. So maybe he can be a guy that can kind of fit into that starting rotation at times, or just could be a nice bench three-point shooter for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like you kind of laid it out pretty well there. I think Tilly will fit right in. Try and, figure out that spacing. Doc Rivers likes to have some shooters around. And I think that that'll be one of their biggest offseason goals, is adding some more shooting onto the fine spots on their roster, guys 7 through 12. Moving on to the Kings here at pick 35, where do we have the Kings going with their second selection this round?
Yep. So for this pick, we have them going with Tyler Bay, a forward out of Colorado. Often has been deemed as a defensive forward. And as you had mentioned earlier, he's definitely a guy that you can put on a rotation and trust him defensively.
Yeah, I like Bay's versatility defensively. Moves his feet well, pretty good size and frame for a wing. Was really successful at Colorado, and I think he's a guy in the second round that'll translate pretty well to the NBA and can kind of find some success. His swing skills, shooting, kind of up and down in his 2 years, but I think that there is some potential there, and I think he's a worthwhile pick in the top end of the second round. The Sixers, again, here the Kings and Sixers keep dancing back and forth. Where do we have the Sixers going at 36?
Yeah, so for this selection, we have them taking Elijah Hughes, guard out of Syracuse. Sheldon, give us some analysis on what you know about Hughes.
Yeah, Hughes, I have some question marks about Elijah Hughes defensively. Obviously, Syracuse is known for their heavy zone usage under Jim Boeheim. Obviously, it's been very successful for a college program, but usually tends to leave some of their guards that come out not really pro-ready defensively. Same thing happened with Malachi Richardson a few years back. But Elijah Hughes, Has some shot creating potential. I could see a lot the fit here for Philadelphia. They have some picks in the second round to kind of use, and I think Hughes comes in, gives them a guy that maybe a few years down the road could really be a go-to option from time to time in the half court, and that's really what they're trying to add. And I think Hughes, I don't believe he will really kind of transition into that, but I think there is some potential that teams will see in that, and I think he's valuable here around pick 36 or so. Moving into 37, the Washington Wizards, who did draft Devin Vassell in our first round. What are the Wizards looking to add here in the second?
I think the Wizards ultimately are going to go for possibly the best player available, according to a lot of people and analysts. And that player is Isaiah Stewart, former 5-star, top 5 prospect in his own class out of Washington. Kind of had a down year, wasn't exactly what he was expecting to get out of Washington. He's definitely a hustle guy. He can score the basketball a little bit, but not a lot to his game offensively in terms of skill set and technicality. So honestly, this is kind of where his range, where we feel he'll go. I know a lot of people like him anywhere from the very, very back end of the lottery all the way to this point in the draft. There's a lot of movement on him. I think that he's going to end up more in the second round area.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of questions around his viability as a screen roll guy. Not the most athletic guy, kind of, built more off of touch around the rim and, body positioning, really good at sealing. But obviously, his frame is really, really, he's a thick player. But at the NBA level, fighting for positioning becomes all the more tough. And some of his athletic limitations is what pulls him down here to 37 for us. Moving to the New York Knicks here at 38. They did take Obi Toppin and Nico Mannion in the first round. Where do we have the Knicks going here at this point?
Yeah, so the next we have taking a forward, Robert Woodard, the second out of Mississippi State. They definitely need some wing and forward help. Obviously, I think that Robert Woodard could be a guy that could step in and possibly make the roster. The Knicks, if you're selected by the Knicks in this round, there's a chance that you do make the team, obviously. So I think this pick just makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I think Woodard's got some pretty good upside here as a guard. And I think the Knicks are pretty much a revolving door right now on their roster. We're obviously bringing in new management, GM Leon Rose, and obviously going to be looking to make some aggressive moves this year to kind of retool and revamp that roster. So I think they're going to be, really looking to bring in some young assets and try and see what they get in the draft here. Pick 39, the New Orleans Pelicans at this point traded Drew Holiday to select Killian Hayes at pick 6. And also drafted Patrick Williams at pick 13 here at 39. Obviously got a lot of young talent. Where do we see the Pelicans going here at this spot?
Yeah, so another very, 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 very good player on the board, Devin Dotson, the point guard out of Kansas. He's not really a scorer. However, he is a playmaker and has a little bit of defensive upside. Sheldon, what do you think about this pick?
Yeah, I like Dotson. He kind of is the reverse player of Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball came in as the guy who's going to be, the see-it-all point guard who can kind of fill up the stat sheet. Great defender. Dotson, less traditional of a point guard, pretty small, really, really quick, can get into the lane consistently, plays through contact fairly solidly, and often beats the defender to the spot when going north and south. And I think that really opens up the dribble drive penetration game. And I think that could give them another little wrinkle a few years down the road once Dotson kind of settles into the NBA game. Moving into pick 40 here with the Memphis Grizzlies, obviously a pretty solid year last year. This is their first pick in the draft with pick 14 going to the Boston Celtics from a previous trade a few years back. Where do you see the Grizzlies looking with their first selection?
Yeah, I think the number one thing for the Grizzlies is, kind of show up that backup point guard spot. They can go Malachi Flynn here, point guard out of San Diego State University. Last year, San Diego State came out of nowhere, was winning a ton of games, and they were nationally ranked. So I think he was kind of the beneficiary of that. A lot of the scouting reports show that he has some defensive upside. That's probably the best part of his game. And I think the Grizzlies definitely could use that kind of toughness in the front court.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there with Flynn. He's a competitive player, really was the driving force behind San Diego State's miraculous run this year. Obviously before COVID kind of ended the whole thing. I was looking forward to really seeing them a lot more in the tourney. He's, and he gives them a secondary ball handler when John Morant's off the floor. Obviously Flynn's not going to be the starter there or even compete for the starting job, but I think he gives them a little bit of depth. and really improves that bench lineup that they're trying to run out there. Moving on to the Spurs here at 41, we had them select Aaron Nesmith out of Vanderbilt in the first round. Where do you have the Spurs going?
So for the Spurs here, we have Daniel Oturu, center out of Minnesota. Oturu is a guy that made a big jump from his freshman to sophomore year. He went from an undraftable prospect after his freshman year to a somewhat viable pick in the second round after his last season. He's an okay post scorer. He's a guy that has some shooting potential, that didn't have a lot of exposure, but he has a nice looking shot. And honestly, he's one of the better rebounders in the class. So to pick up a solid prospect like this is very good for the Spurs.
Yeah, Oturu is a guy we had seen, sometimes even near the back end of the lottery and earlier mocks in the year. The Spurs here are obviously making moves to kind of adjust here to the traditional, or to the new NBA with 3-point shooting and kind of spreading the floor a little bit more with selections of Nesmith and Oturu at this point in the draft. We're back to the Pelicans here at 42. Obviously, just grabbed Devon Dotson and have Patrick Williams and Killian Hayes at this point. Where do we have the Pelicans going?
Yeah, with the Pelicans selection, we have them taking Nick Richards, a center from Kentucky.
Yeah, Richards just probably going to be looking to be a depth piece here. Very likely that this pick could get moved out for cash if a team wanted to move up for a player. But at this point, we decided we're going to leave most of the second-round picks on their original teams because it's a little too hard to really mock something meaningful, because not a lot of teams are really looking forward to moving up for a player at this point in the draft. And now at 43, the Sacramento Kings, with their third selection in the second round. Where do we have them going?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing you had mentioned about that prior pick with the Kings pick. Definitely something that could be moved for cash. They have Udoka as a Buike. That's who we have going here, the center from Kansas.
Yeah, again, another depth player here. Maybe could come in, rival Vernon Carey, rival Rashawn Holmes for some minutes. An athletic, big around the rim, can catch lobs. Dunker, spot sitter, can screen a little bit, needs to definitely improve out in space laterally. A lot of questions with his ability to change direction, but that's most of these guys at this point, especially for the big men in the second round here. There's reasons they're not first round selections. Azubuike, he's got a lot of physical tools that you can be excited about. Really struggles from the free throw line, though. Not going to be a skilled player or scorer at the NBA level, but I think that he's got some potential to kind of fill into a lob catching role. And with De'Aaron Fox, I think that's kind of a viable look in Sacramento. 44 here, the Chicago Bulls did get Anthony Edwards in round one of our mock. Where do we have the Chicago Bulls looking?
Yeah, in the front court, you could look for the Bulls possibly to take Lamar Stevens, a forward from Penn State. He's been deemed a powerful forward, so we very likely will see him at the 4 spot. He's 6'7", not a guy that's probably going to be able to play the 3. So I kind of like that for a depth pickup for the Bulls.
Yeah, they're one of those teams. Obviously, they have Gafford, and obviously they got Markkanen and a bunch of other young assets. So it's kind of hard to mock to where they would be going at this point. It's kind of dependent on who they really like instead of positional need. I think Stevens is a guy that, maybe could come in and give them some power minutes behind Markkanen, kind of fits well there. Looking at 45 here with the Orlando Magic, they obviously are in an interesting spot. Could be selling, could be buying, trying to improve their roster or tear it maybe down. Where do we have the Orlando Magic looking?
For the Orlando Magic pick, we are going to have them taking Xavier Tillman, who's a power forward from Michigan State. Tillman's a guy who was a standout defender at his time at Michigan State. So honestly, that's, it's not super likely that he'll stick around for a long time, but he's just a guy for Orlando. Not much to say about this selection.
Yeah, fills in for Jonathan Isaac for a year while he's rehabbing from a torn ACL. The Portland Trailblazers here at 46, obviously trying to build around the prime of Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum and Yusuf Nurkic. Where do we have them going at this point?
With this selection, we have them actually staying in state and getting Payton Pritchard, the point guard from Oregon. A lot of people that watch college basketball know Payton Pritchard's game. I honestly think this is a perfect selection with them being able to get Jaden McDaniels in the first, who's more of a boomer bust prospect. Pritchard is more of a sure thing actually in this second round.
Yeah, Pritchard, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a capable ball handler, someone who's going to move the ball. Might be able to, give you a few buckets here and there, but is going to be able to run the pick and roll And I actually really like this pick for Portland at this point. In the bubble, we saw Damian Lillard having to play about 46.5 minutes a game, trying to keep their playoff hopes alive because their backup point guard play was a little spotty. Anthony Simons kind of struggled. They, really, made moves to try and trust and put faith in him, and he just hasn't really delivered. And Gary Trent isn't quite, that playmaking guard. So I think Pritchard coming off the bench for Portland at this point would make a lot of sense if he falls to 46. Now at 47, the Boston Celtics. At this point, we've had them go with Sadiq Bey, forward out of Villanova. Where do you see the Celtics going?
Yeah, so I think the Celtics are going to pick up another forward here. They're going to go Reggie Perry from Mississippi State. Mississippi State had a pretty good year at producing players. Obviously, Woodard was selected earlier. Now Reggie Perry, who's another pretty big, broad-shouldered forward, is going to come into the fold, and he's going to be nothing more really than a depth piece for them.
Yeah, he's going to be, that's part of the thing too for the Celtics here. You're looking to add some hard-nosed competitive players, and I think that's kind of what you're getting here with Reggie Perry. To a degree. At pick 48, the Golden State Warriors are on the clock, obviously championship aspirations. Where do we have the Warriors looking?
So the Warriors love their shooting, and they're going to select Jordan Warra from Louisville. He's a forward, shot pretty well from deep at Louisville, and I think this pick makes a lot of sense for a team that loves to draft shooters and kind of fits the mold for them.
Yeah, and Warra, that's what you're really looking for is maybe a low-end 3-and-D wing at this point. He showed some defensive assets. Obviously, Louisville known for being a very solid defensive college program. Nora kind of took a lot of the brunt of scoring as a shooter. He's got some offensive limitations, really cannot go to his left at all at this point, but no better place really than the Golden State Warriors to go. All the pressure is going to be taken off of him early. He's going to be able to just come in, give him, some very low-end rotational minutes early in his career, and maybe they can really work with him and open up some of his game to kind of fill in that backup small forward spot moving forward. The 76ers here now with their third selection in the second round. Obviously another trade down spot if a team wanted to at this point in the draft, but that would be very situational. So we'll have them stick here at 49. What's the pick here?
Yeah, so this potentially could be the best pick in the second round. Jay Scrubb out of Logan, shooting guard. He definitely could fill a need, possibly replacing Alec Burke, depending on what happens with him. So what's your analysis on Jay Scrubb?
Yeah, Jay Scrubb is a player I get a little bubbly over. I think Jay Scrubb is one of the top 15 players in this class, actually. Watching what his physical profile is in his time at John A. Logan, he jumps out of the gym. He's got a 40-inch vertical around. He's left-handed, has some of the tools to really, create open looks for himself. Has a slight tendency to really, prefer going left still at this point in his career as a left-handed dribbler. Needs to open up with his right hand a little bit more, but he does have some of the traits to, kind of create a shot going right. But needs to improve as a slasher in that area. And if you guys haven't watched him at this point, you guys need to put the film on and look at him. Obviously, it's hard to tell against Division II competition, but the biggest thing is he's got an NBA body. The physical traits are there, and I think he's got a lot of skill to work with. And I think that at this point, this would be a home run pick for the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, we've been mocking a lot of creators to them, and I think Scrubb is actually the best one of the ones we've mocked to them at this point in the draft. Moving into pick 50, the Atlanta Hawks acquired Drew Holiday already in this draft for the rights of Killian Hayes. Where do we have the Hawks going?
So the Hawks are going to try taking the most sure thing they can with the pick that they have here. We're going to opt to have them take Cassius Winston, point guard from Michigan State, who's a senior, shows a lot of heart, a true competitor. He's a guy that you want kind of leading that second unit if you cannot find a point guard in free agency or via trade. He's the best thing available right now. I love this fit for them. They're going to have to replace Jeff Teague as their backup point guard. So I think he comes in and he's an immediate contributor actually from, considering he's a second round pick.
Yeah, Winston, obviously one of the more NBA ready guards. There's even some possibilities he goes in the end of the first round. I think this is kind of the low end value for him, depending on how teams feel about some of the other guards that have some real college experience. And I think Winston could really, fit in well wherever he goes. He's going to be ready to lead a backup unit, and he's going to be able to provide some scoring input, a little bit of playmaking, and he can run the pick and roll already. Obviously a little undersized, not going to be the best NBA body. That's why he's in the second round here. But I think that that's a valuable pick, and I think there's some value in that. So moving on to the Warriors here again, obviously having them just take Warra, the pick before. Where do we see the Warriors going?
For the Warriors, I have them taking Philip Petrusev, center from Gonzaga. This guy is actually, he left Gonzaga to go and play in Europe this upcoming season. So for the Warriors, it's a perfect draft and stash player who could come back and maybe ready to play in the NBA next year.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some value there. Obviously, they should be targeting some win now moves, but at this point in the draft, maybe you take a guy that you can bring back around, gives you some cap flexibility because you don't have to commit any money to him at this point. And the Warriors are obviously looking for some young centers to try and develop anyway. So give him a year to develop on his own. Maybe you're getting a guy who would have been around pick 30 in the following draft based on his development. So I think that's a pretty good grab here at 51. Sacramento Kings on the board yet again with their fourth selection in the second round. Where do we have the Sacramento Kings going?
So we have the Sacramento Kings going Marcus Howard, guard from Marquette, 5'11" guard. He's deemed a dynamic scorer. However, a little bit shaky in terms of consistency. He's a little bit undersized. What's your analysis on Marcus Howard here?
Yeah, I think Howard's going to be one of those guys that was, really good college player, really filled it up. Doesn't quite find the success at the NBA level. Obviously, Sacramento is a place where I think he will get some minutes and really get an opportunity. But at the same time, I just think, his size is going to be a little bit of a limitation. I think defensively he's got limitations. And, at best he's going to become a guy who comes off the bench and, maybe he's a little bit of a spark plug for a team. But I don't see him at all as a, big time meaningful player, as some people seem to talk about him in the media. And at pick 53 here, the Oklahoma City Thunder are selecting, obviously kind of in the midst of a rebuild, possibly with CP3 on the trade block. Some may believe. Where do we have the Thunder going?
So at pick 53, we have Omer Yurtseven from Georgetown. And honestly, this is just, once again, a depth pick. They might be shopping around Steven Adams. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if they go here, if they think he could be a viable prospect to possibly replace him. He's from Turkey. He's 7 feet with a 7'1" wingspan. He does have a little bit of a shooting touch, but he's pretty average all across the board outside of that.
Yeah, that's going to be one of those picks where they're just, trying to hope that they can put together a little bit and maybe get a few, rotational minutes out of him early in his career. And then, it's going to be a project piece. It's kind of hard to project where some of these players will go, obviously. They look good in college, but they don't quite have all the NBA traits that they need. And a lot of their games kind of 50-50, whether or not they're out of the league early or can kind of grow into that rotational player consistently. Looking at 54, the Indiana Pacers here, we had them go with Desmond Bane earlier and Leandro Bolmaro in a trade. Where do we have the Pacers looking at 54?
Yeah, so the Pacers are not afraid to draft overseas. They are going to opt to select Yam Madar from Israel. He played in the same league as Deni Avdija. He is not afraid to guard your favorite Turkish player or Israel player. This guy is Mr. 94 feet of overseas. He's very feisty defender. You can switch him on to possibly twos or threes. He's a guy that plays bigger than his 6'3" frame indicates. He has active hands, quick hands. He's able to pick guys' pockets. Just a guy that's kind of a glue player. He is actually a pretty surprisingly good handle. And he's not going to wow you scoring the basketball. However, this guy is just, he's a hard player. He appears to love the game of basketball by just watching him. I think this is a phenomenal pick for the Indiana Pacers. And a lot of people do not know who this guy is. Please get familiar with him.
Yeah, Yam Madar is to Austin as Jay Scrubb is to me. These are our 2 second-round guys that we both individually love. And I think Austin really summed it up well with Madar's defensive end presence. Jay Scrubb's more of an offensive weapon moving forward, and Madar's going to cover on the defensive end. Hopefully the two of them land on the same team in the real draft. That would be incredible. But I think that would be a phenomenal pick here for the Pacers, kind of get that guard depth defensively. Moving into the Brooklyn Nets at 55. Obviously, they have championship aspirations. Where do we have the Nets going at this point?
Yeah, so we have them going Nate Hinton, the 6'5" wing out of Houston. He's a pretty good athlete and a pretty good rebounder for a guard. So what's some of your analysis on what you've seen of Hinton?
Yeah, Hinton, he's going to be one of those guys that finds himself around the rim, kind of going to be a hustle guy, almost averaged a double-double as a sophomore at Houston. Took a huge stride, only started one game his freshman season for Houston, but then became a full-time starter this past year. And, is really kind of blossoming into a guy who's going to, play hard-nosed, get his head around the rim, and kind of just hunt for the ball. And I think that Brooklyn's going to be looking for some players like that to kind of round out the rest of their roster. Around the skill that they've acquired in recent years. Looking at 56, the Charlotte Hornets are on the clock yet again. We had them go Onyeka Okongwu and Cassius Stanley at this point too. Pretty high upside guys and pretty NBA ready players. Where do we have the Hornets looking?
Yeah, so we have the Hornets going with the forward Keandre Cook, who's a shooter. He's not much of a ball handler or playmaker. He is able to shoot the ball, and your hope for him coming out of Missouri State would be he can transition into a 3-and-D player. Very unlikely that he has a long career. However, if he is able to kind of get a chance, get some rotational minutes on a bad Hornets team, he could maybe play himself into a second contract.
Yeah, I think Cook's one of those upside picks again. And at this point, they got two guys who I'm pretty certain will be NBA rotational players at the very least. So kind of taking a swing or miss selection here at 56 does make some sense for Charlotte. Pick 57, your Los Angeles Clippers are on the clock here. Obviously, their first pick of the draft with pick 27 going to the New York Knicks in the Marcus Morris trade. Where do you think the Clippers will go, and do you like the pick?
Yeah, so for this selection, we have them taking Mason Jones, who is a shooting guard out of Arkansas, another Arkansas player that goes. He's primarily a scoring guard and has a pretty good range for this point in the draft. He can get his own shot. So for the Clippers here, it's about trying to replace Rodney McGruder, who is just an atrocious shooter, defender, ball handler, pretty much everything in the game of basketball. So replacing him with a Mason Jones makes a lot of sense. I'd love to pick if that means McGruder's expendable.
Yeah, obviously the Clippers here at this point kind of looking for, Mr. 11 or 12 on their roster. Obviously not a lot of pressure here on the Clippers. They want to get a guy who's probably going to be able to come in and help them a little bit during the regular season, and then, maybe a few years down the road get some actual meaningful minutes in the playoffs at some point. Now pick 58, the Philadelphia 76ers with also their fourth selection in the second round. And remember, guys, that it's very likely that they package some of these to go either move up into the first round again or to move back out into a future year to keep kind of some of their assets there, especially with Daryl Morey now running the show. What do you see the Sixers doing here?
For the Sixers, we have them selecting Emmanuel Quickley, point guard out of Kentucky. Obviously wasn't a big contributor for Kentucky this season. What's your analysis on him?
Yeah, he's going to be a guard that's, going to come in. He's a little dynamic, can get to the rim. He's quick. No pun intended there, obviously, with his last name. And he's kind of not a compact guard, but he's like lengthy, but kind of small yet. And I think that he'll be able to come in, and I think he'll be kind of fighting for a roster spot early. He'd probably stick around as a 12th or 13th guy, get a lot of DNPs early in his career. But possibly could be a guy that, grows into a rotational point guard at best. Now at pick 59, the Toronto Raptors are on the clock. And there's a few guys here that I think are definitely worth considering. Where do you go here with the Toronto Raptors selection at 59?
For the Raptors, we have them taking a senior, Mamadi Diakite from Virginia. He is starting to shoot the three ball now, and he's ready for the league, especially on the defensive end. So just a 3-and-D guy, if you can develop his three-point shot just a little further. Honestly, not going to make a big impact right away. However, you just hope to develop that later on.
Yeah, I think the Raptors are going to be operating under the idea that Fred VanVleet will be returning. I think that they're very confident with where their guards and small forward positions kind of look, and I think they're a little worried about potentially what their front court is going to look like going into this draft. Gasol could leave, Ibaka could even take a mid-level exception somewhere to go win on a team like even the Golden State Warriors, which I think a lot of teams should be worried about at this point. And I think Diakite is going to be kind of who they target to try and fill in some of that front court depth early. He's going to be NBA ready. He's going to come in. He's able to give you some minutes. And I think that pick does make quite a bit of sense here for a team that has championship aspirations still. And looking at pick 60, the Pelicans are on the clock yet again. Where do we see the Pelicans going?
Yeah, so honestly, a steal in the draft at this point very well could have went sooner. We have Paul Reed from DePaul going. He has pretty good length, and he's agile for his size. He is able to start to shoot the basketball now, so that's an ongoing project for him. And he can also possibly become a rim protector when he gets to the league, low-level rim protector, obviously. But I think this is a really, really good pick to kind of round out the second round here.
Yeah, I think that's a strong pick here at 60. We could even see him go as high as possibly 35, 36 range. Obviously, it's a little dependent on who likes what player and at what point. Obviously, each GM has their own slight preference. So for a while, he could be the third or fourth best player on a lot of teams' boards as he kind of falls at this point. Looking through here, the second round, Austin, who do you really think had a pretty strong second round, and who do you think could have done a little bit better for themselves?
I think a team that did really well actually was the Golden State Warriors. They were able to get Warra and as well as a draft and stash guy. And the Warriors always find a way to, outperform everybody when it comes to, from a general manager drafting standpoint, acquiring talent standpoint. They're able to Bob Myers is kind of able to see things before they happen. Obviously has a history of making some very great picks, including Draymond Green in the second round. So I think the Warriors were pretty dangerous. And in terms of teams that could have been better, it's really hard with the second round to deem losers. However, honestly, I think you're a loser if you're the Pelicans and have that many seconds and aren't able to do anything with it. That's very likely that won't happen. Same with the Kings. If you have that many second rounders, which, one of them might bound to have more of those second rounders and just draft them and then, possibly cut them later on, I think you're deemed a loser at that point.
Yeah, I think so too. And like we had mentioned multiple times, just for the viewers' sake, it's likely that teams with 3 or 4 second rounders are going to make a move either out to next year or future years, or, back into the first round at the end if there's a guy that they like and want to get on a guaranteed contract immediately. There's a lot to watch in this draft. For me, personally, I really like the Payton Pritchard pick at 46, keeping him in Oregon, playing for the Portland Trailblazers to kind of get their NBA-ready backup point guard in a year that they're still trying to compete in the West, a very tough conference. And I think that they're, going to be trying to put forward every step they can to be competitive. And I also, I really like the 76ers with the Scrubb pick here. I think that Scrubb's got some of the best potential in the class. And I think you kind of nailed it too with some of the losers in terms of just what the draft looks like. When you have multiple second round picks, you're really, kind of getting, a nickel for your dime on value in a lot of ways. So I think that's kind of how we're looking. Let us know down in the comments below who you think were the winners and losers in the second round mock here. Make sure to go check out our first round mock as well. There will be another card up, and link will be in the description. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We really appreciate you guys tuning in, and it means a lot to us. So please keep doing so. Hit the bell for notifications, and we'll see you in the next video.